Tonight on Nightline, Dashed Dreams. How did the film with the most Oscar buzz and Beyonce miss a nod for Best Picture? The Dreamgirls debacle that has Hollywood buzzing. The anatomy of a snub. A mother slain. They met at Harvard and fell in love with their adopted city of New Orleans until the Crescent City crime wave came to this young couple's doorstep. Can New Orleans save itself from itself? And mind your manners. What's France's solution to its sagging tourism business? Well, teach tourists how to be rude, like the French. Can you make a boff? That's a sign of the times.
From the global resources of ABC News, with Terry Moran in Washington, Martin Bashir and Cynthia McFadden in New York City, this is Nightline, January 24th, 2007.
Well, it's one of the starkest examples of what a hopeless and violent place post-Katrina New Orleans can be. A young family with the best of intentions brutally attacked in the city they loved and so wanted to help. The Crescent City is now experiencing a major crime wave. But even so, this killing stood out. Here's Nightline's Chris Beery.
Table manners. Did you get your shoe wet?
At this nursery school opened by parents who needed daycare after Katrina, one tiny student is missing and his absence is deeply felt.
Francis didn't want to take the picture, and we bribed him to with a candy cane.
The school's director treasures this particular snapshot of the 2-year-old boy.
Little bow tie.
I'm sure Mom made the outfit. She certainly put together that tie.
But young Francis has now left this troubled city, having survived a senseless crime that took the life of his mother and left his father badly hurt. Here at their home, friends have placed flowers and beads and candles. The family was here just before 6 in the morning on January 4th. Police found Paul Galunas clutching his son Francis. Paul had been shot 3 times but was still alive. His wife Helen, shot in the neck, was already dead. Their 2-year-old unhurt.
What was your thought when you learned it was them, it was this particular family?
I, just incredulous disbelief. The most improbable people to be harmed in this, violent way.
Here, amid the galleries and studios of New Orleans, the crime, still unsolved, has burned a hole in the city's arts community.
Incredibly in love with each other.
Rene Broussard, who runs the Zeitgeist Arts Center, says his friends Helen Hill, a filmmaker, and Paul Galunas, a doctor, were a perfect match for the city they loved. Talented, creative, quirky, and joyful.
Very optimistic, always smiling, always happy. I mean, people would meet Helen and Paul for the first time. They would always say, are they for real? It's like, I've never seen Helen where she didn't have a smile on her face until, I saw her in her coffin, And it's just insane to me that, this could have happened to her of all people.
They had met at Harvard, moved to New Orleans, and fallen in love. After Katrina destroyed their home, Helen desperately wanted to return. Paul worried that New Orleans, struggling with the most basic city services, would not be a healthy place to raise their baby son. But Helen hatched a plot to change her husband's mind.
She had this covert campaign behind his back where she had all of her friends send in these postcards,
urging him to come back.
Begging them to come back. And, because Paul was my doctor, I put on mine to keep me alive.
Whatever the case, it worked.
Whatever the case, it worked. They moved back at the end of August.
Helen made award-winning animated films and taught her craft in workshops she called filmmaking bees. Her husband, Paul, practiced medicine at neighborhood clinics for low-income residents. He treated many of New Orleans' struggling artists and community activists, including public interest lawyer Billy Southern.
These were precisely the kinds of folks that we needed here in New Orleans most as we recover from Hurricane Katrina.
Why is that?
Because, well, not only did they bring optimism, but they also brought genuine talent and skills to to a city where we don't have many doctors, where we don't have many teachers, where we don't have many people who can lay the groundwork for a future here.
But that future is threatened by a surge in violent crime. In the first 10 days of 2007, 9 people were murdered in New Orleans, 6 of them in one 24-hour period. For a city still barely recovering from Hurricane Katrina, the crimes have hit like another killer storm.
It's somewhere between catastrophic and worse. It's, the average homicide rate for the United States is about 6. We, in the last 6 months, have been about 94 per 100,000. There may not be a city which has as high a murder rate as New Orleans has experienced in the last 6 months.
Crime statistics alone don't do justice to the emptiness such murders have left behind. In a cafe near the home of Helen and Paul, members of a popular New Orleans combo, the Hot 8 Brass Band, are jamming with other musicians. They too are feeling a deep loss. Their snare drummer, Dinneral Shavers, was gunned down in his car, his wife at his side, just days before Helen Hill was murdered. Police suspect the accused killer, a 17-year-old, was gunning for someone else. Shavers' fellow band members are shaken.
Tough blow to the band, tough blow to the city, his family. He was the heartbeat. He would pick up the band and keep that tempo up and keep everything alive, keep everybody on their toes. And then he was a good person at the same time.
Dinneral Shavers, too, seemed just the kind of person New Orleans needs. His Hot 8 Brass Band was just taking off, performing across this country, Europe, and Japan. In his spare time, Shavers taught music at this New Orleans high school, where last year he created its very first marching band, with all new donated instruments that he helped to procure.
But the Shavers work hard to get everything that we have. It's our duty to go out there and show them that we're going to keep marching on, we're going to keep fighting, and we're not going to forget who brought us here. Am I right, band?
Yes, sir.
The crime spree and the heavy losses it has inflicted on New Orleans led thousands of residents to march on City Hall earlier this month. Parents from the nursery school that Francis attended pushed empty strollers in protest.
Are you angry about the way the city has handled crime?
I'm really angry. We need help. It's just as much of a crisis as this Category 5 thing that we could see on the radar. It's coming in dribs and drabs every day in the newspaper.
This city will focus on murders, and we're drawing a line in the sand.
City officials promised to put more cops back on the beat, establish late-night checkpoints, and add surveillance cameras. But the murders have some New Orleans residents second-guessing their decisions to return.
For the first time, I just felt like, why do I live here? Why did they live here? And I just really felt like things are just never going to change here. We're stuck in this rut, and it killed my friend.
If everybody leaves, all the artists leave, it's like then with one bullet, that person's been able to take away everything that's good about the city.
We had a conversation and made a decision that we were going to work to be a part of the solution, that we really believe that that's what Helen would want us to do because she so desperately loved this city.
And the Hot 8 Brass Band, they too plan to keep the beat and the memory of Dinneral Shavers alive in their music. The murders have blown a hole in the soul of New Orleans, but for all the melancholy, there is also a hopeful note that the city that survived Katrina can somehow recover from this violent storm as well. This is Chris Bury for Nightline in New Orleans.
Life and death in New Orleans after Katrina. We're going to take a break now. When we come back, we'll go on a very different note and tell you how to act as rudely as the French. And it's a sign of the times.